Okay, we will call to order the meeting for the Shenandoah City Council, Wednesday, August 22nd, 2018, 7 p.m. Call the roll. Notice that everybody is here. If you'll stand with me, we're going to say a Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like to stay standing with me, I'll say a quick invocation for us. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Dear Lord, once again we come to you and just say thank you. Thank you for the grace and the love that you show us, the ability to pass that on to our neighbors. Thank you for the people that come to these meetings, that watch online, that try to stay involved in their community and try to help make it a better place. We appreciate the staff that works here, their efforts to try to help us all have a better life, a better place to raise our families. We hope that we can use your wisdom and your guidance as we move through this agenda tonight and try to make the right decisions for our community as a whole. We pray these things in your Son's name, and all God people said, Amen. Amen. Okay, well, good evening, everybody. Glad to see everybody here. I'm sure most of you all know we had to cancel the MDD meeting because we had some folks that had some emergencies come up and couldn't make it, so we hope they're okay and hope everything's okay with their families. Sorry if you showed up early and we're expecting to see that MDD meeting. We tried to get the word out, but we apologize if you didn't get it. So normally we have a citizens forum. Didn't have anybody sign up to speak, so we're going to roll right into the meeting. And our very first order of business is we get to introduce a new team member, which is always one of my favorite times. Kathy, would you like to introduce our new team member?
Council, Jesse Vargas is our newest field service representative. Jesse's in the back there. He just started with us. Jesse was born and raised in Houston. He's a proud graduate of Aldine High School. He enjoys listening to music and collecting old and new vinyl records. He's still training with us, but he's coming up to speed quickly. He works really hard, and we're glad to have Jesse as part of our team. Thanks, Jesse.
Welcome, Jesse.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Welcome, Jesse.
Welcome aboard, Jesse. We're glad to have you. Okay, thanks, Kathy. We will move from there into item 6, which is presentation of Metro Park Square PID service and assessment plan update from our PID administrator, Mitch Mosman. Did I say Mosman right, by the way?
Close enough. Mosesman.
Mosesman. I thought after I saw that S there, I was like, I bet that's supposed to be pronounced.
Just like it reads, yes. Mitch Mosesman, I'm with the firm of 3360 Public Finance, and I have a very brief presentation here. I think all of you were on council back when the Public Improvement District was originally created.
Correct.
And the bonds were issued earlier this year. So this is a routine annual process that's required by statute, by the PID statute, to update the service plan, update the assessment plan, and in particular, in this case, it's very routine. There has not been a lot of change, but the organization of the update is to kind of recap the issuance of the bonds. So if you recall, there were approximately $15,200,000 in bonds issued back in the January-February timeframe. We don't, at this moment, anticipate any more debt. So that's what we have outstanding. The first scheduled payment was actually, it's actually coming up. It's September of this year. That will be covered by capitalized interest. A certain amount of bond proceeds was set aside to make that payment. And then going forward, the county will bill and collect the annual installments, and we're going to pay interest from those proceeds as well as ongoing administrative expenses. So if you'd like, if you turn to page 6 of the Service and Assessment Plan update, there's table 3.2 at the top. That just gives you a brief 5-year projection of the cash flows. And the time frame here is couched in the context of the assessment year. So we have turned over the annual installments for 2018 to the county. That will be used to pay debt service on the bonds in 2019. And we have roughly $1,148,000 that we're going to be collecting this year, and it breaks down into $205,000 for principal, $836,000 for interest, and then $30,600 for administrative expenses. There's one other component called the additional interest. It's an extra 0.5% that's set aside for a special reserve. Nothing has really changed in terms of the authorized improvements. As originally contemplated, they're categorized into kind of 3 different statuses. There were improvements that were already completed at the time that the district was created. There are improvements that were under construction, and then there are future improvements. And so we just restate the description of the authorized improvements on pages 6 and 7, and then we have tables that run on page 7 and 8 that show you the dollar amount for each one of those 3 categories. Moving on to section 4, we have the same 12 properties that we had originally. Not much has changed. So the assessment roll is essentially the same. There's been no subdivision, no need to spread, but the assessment spread is just based on acreage. So when the property does subdivide, fairly straightforward mechanism to spread the assessments. And if you look at Appendix A, you can see the assessment roll. It shows the full amortization of the assessment for each of the benefited parcels. The print's a little small there because I tried to squeeze a couple schedules onto the page. And then we have a couple of exhibits just to remind you the boundaries, which is shown in Exhibit A. I've overlaid the kind of the plat of the property in red onto a satellite image to give you a little bit of a feel for how that looks. And then we've restated the original Service and Assessment Plan improvement location exhibits in Exhibit B. So this is very routine, nothing much out of the ordinary here. But I'll stand for any questions.
So I'd just like to clarify that the people being assessed, the properties being assessed, are only within this boundary, and they all requested that we do this.
That's correct. There was a petition to create the district and to levy the assessments. These assessments have already been levied, so this is just the implementation, the collecting of the annual installment for this particular year.
Anybody else? So I do have one thing that I'd like to, number 1, point out, and number 2, ask for clarification. On page 6, section B, item 1 is roadway improvements. And it says roadway improvements are the public road improvements depicted on Exhibit B1, including import fill, subgrade stabilization, including lime treatment and compaction, concrete and reinforcing steel, and may include improvement and extension of David Memorial Drive. So that is, according to the exhibit, the entire David Memorial Drive, am I correct? It looks like from top to bottom, south to north, on the exhibit, that's all of David Memorial Drive that runs behind Metro Park Square. I'm sorry, not just the portion that's there currently attaching to their southern entrance, but it looks like it could feasibly cover the entire portion of that David Memorial Drive.
Well, I'll comment on this, and Joseph could provide input as well. But if you look at Exhibit B1, the roadway exhibit, David Memorial is kind of crosshatched there, and the label for the crosshatched is non-PID. There's a little piece of it that's kind of solid shaded, that is PID.
Maybe I'm seeing
One
something
more
different
page
than you
down.
are.
Go down
Next
to B,
page.
go down to
Page
B.
30, in your agenda pack, page 30.
There, right there.
You see,
Right there by the central property, right there where,
and it's a little hard to see on screen, but there's a little bit of cross-hatching running on a diagonal on David Memorial. And that, the legend indicates that that's non-PID future phase improvements.
So the previous diagram, which is on page,
That was just an
28, I
illustration
guess.
on Exhibit A, the boundaries. It was just an illustration to try to get a satellite or aerial view.
so I don't see a distinction in the PID document that says where that David Memorial extension stops, I guess would be my question.
If I remember correctly, the PID will allow money to be spent on David Memorial Drive.
Does not require it.
Does not
Does it require it? Yeah, no, I agree with that 100%, but at one point we were told that it was not allowed, that the PID wouldn't be able to cover David Memorial Drive. It looks to me like under roadway improvements, there's no cap, I guess, for how much of David Memorial Drive, if I'm describing that correctly. It looks low. It looks like the PID was approved for about 18 million. It looks like about 15 million so far is pledged. There's about a $3 million difference between what was originally approved versus what is actually being spent. I'm just pointing out that I think there, to me, what looks like, after reviewing this a couple times, it looks like there's some wiggle room there for more of David Memorial Drive to be completed under the PID.
You may have some wiggle room. I think if you were to try to tap that additional authorization, you may need to come back with a supplemental assessment. I don't, from my understanding and from looking at the exhibits that we have from this exhibit B1 is from the original service and assessment plan. So I think the proceeds from these bonds only contemplated what is labeled as a PID improvement.
Gotcha.
There is the possibility to come back with a supplemental assessment.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you for the clarification.
looks to me, Mayor, it's just this little section just to connect that first street.
I think that's what it shows right now on the diagram, but I don't think that I don't think that it's limited to just that. I think that it could, based on the wording in the document and the dollar amount, it doesn't, like Councilman McLeod said, it doesn't have to, but possibly it could include the rest of the David Memorial extension along that track. That was my interpretation, so that's what I wanted to ask. Anybody got any other questions?
Yeah, just a clarification for the attorney. There appears to be a typo on page 34. It says City Council opened and conducted a public hearing on March 22nd, 2016. Pretty sure that was 17.
Yeah, I'm certain it was 17.
Yeah. Just before we sign it, it'll be good to fix that.
You said that was on page 34.
34.
Of the agenda packet?
34, yeah, 34 of the agenda packet.
Okay. Anybody else got anything else? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well then we will move into item 7, which is discussion and possible action to adopt the following resolution, a resolution of the City of Shenandoah approving the annual service plan update to the service and assessment plan that we just described.
So moved.
Second.
So we have a motion, we have a second, do we have any discussion? Do we want to make a motion based on the change that Councilman McLeod pointed out?
I'll amend my motion to include that, absolutely. Sorry.
Yeah, second that.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. That was a motion by Councilman Broughton, a second by Councilman McLeod. Okay, we're going to move down past items 8, 9, and 10. We'll circle back to those. We're going to go to item 11, which is discussion and possible action to adopt the following ordinance. An ordinance by the City of Shenandoah, Texas, denying the rate increase request of Entergy Texas, as stated in your agenda packet.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion by Councilman McLeod to deny. I have a second by Councilman Raymaker. Do we have any discussion?
I think they made some excellent arguments about denying this rate increase or opposing this rate increase.
And I received correspondence today from the attorneys for the committee. There's a tentative settlement worked out which negates the rate increase. I think it's down to less than 1%, less than 1/10%.
I could live with that.
Yeah. But we still need to pass this.
Oh, I agree.
Deny.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 12, discussion and possible action to adopt the following resolution. A resolution of the City of Shenandoah, Texas, nominating a candidate to the Montgomery County Appraisal District Board of Directors.
Council, as you'll see in your agenda pack, there is a vacancy on this board created by a resignation by Robert Casey. There is a resolution to nominate a candidate. So you see the requirements are attached to as far as what the qualifications are. In the past, we have nominated Councilman Raymaker 1 year. So, and this is a nomination, so it's not the final vote.
Make a motion, we nominate Councilman Raymaker.
I'll serve.
Second.
So we have a motion to nominate Councilman Raymaker for the Montgomery County Appraisal District by Councilman Brock. We have a second by Councilman Fletcher. Do we have any discussion? Just for the record, Councilman Raymaker, you said you are willing to serve in that capacity?
Absolutely.
We appreciate that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
And that nominee will be appointed by a majority of the board. So.
Item 13, which is discussion and possible action regarding a vote for appointment to the MCECD Board of Managers.
Council, this is a similar situation where we have a vacancy created by the resignation of Vicki Rudy from Oak Ridge North. This process is a little bit different. In this case, the city nominated somebody, and now there's a ballot, and you'll cast your votes. There's actually only one candidate, and the area cities have supported that candidate. It is Jack Yates, who's the city manager for Montgomery.
We have a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion for Jack Yates.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Councilman McLeod. We have a second by Councilman Broad. Do we have any discussion?
So did we actually nominate someone?
This did
How
not.
does this process work?
This process is a little bit different, and I did contact 911 about the process. They said that the council doesn't act to nominate somebody. The mayor can make that recommendation. At that time, I advised Mayor Wheeler that the other area cities were supporting Mr. Yates, and I had no, strong feeling one way or the other. I haven't met Mr. Yates, but I know that he does have the unanimous support of the other cities. So we went with that nomination, and it was the mayor's to make.
Okay.
And then the council makes the vote, which is what we're doing tonight.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain.
Motion carries 4-0 with Councilman Raymaker abstaining. Item 14, discussion and possible action to adopt the following ordinance. an ordinance of the City of Shenandoah, Texas, amending the Code of Ordinances to approve an extension of a special use permit for a mixed beverage late hours permit for AMC Metro Park, as stated in your agenda packet. Kathy, you want to give us a quick synopsis?
Sure. Council, this was approved previously, and their SUP is about to expire just because they have not completed in time in the same schedule that they thought they would. The SUP extension, or the original SUP, was for mixed beverage plus late hours, and this is at the AMC Theater. The late hours, as you know, is anything after midnight, so midnight to 2. But the theater did indicate at the original approval that they do stop serving at 12:30, and that gives them time to make sure everybody's finished. The P&Z met last night, and they did unanimously recommend approval of the extension.
I move that we approve the SUP.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilman Fletcher to approve. We have a second by Councilman Raymaker. Do we have any discussion?
We have an idea of when they'll be open?
Is it March? March
Is
of
it within the
19.
6 months?
Yeah, we have a
I
representative.
think we have a representative from AMC Movie Theater.
Yeah.
Council members Marcus Schwartz, Foley Gardner, Austin, Texas, outside attorney for AMC. Right now, the projection is that the landlord is going to turn over the property to AMC in January 19, and we would expect to have a soft opening probably early March, if everything sticks according to schedule.
Perfect.
So we did give ourselves a little bit, just so that if there are some delays, we don't have to come back and do this over again.
Yeah, don't count on another extension. Let's get open.
I want to see some.
We'll do our best. We're waiting on the landlord, so to speak.
The
So
delay was based on wetlands permit?
I am not exactly privy to that, so I would have to defer to Jackie or someone on the landowner side, frankly. I had heard that there was a wetlands permit in relation to a parking garage
Parking garage,
nearby,
yeah.
but I can't confirm that one way or the other.
Great. Well, thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you for your consideration.
So Bill, to clarify, late hours versus regular hours, if you get a late hours permit or a regular hours permit, I was just reading the TABC, all the consumption has to be done by 12:15, a regular hours permit.
Regular.
Is that correct?
I believe that's right, yes.
Okay, and then a late hours permit, all the consumption has to be done by 2:15. They have to stop serving at 2, but all the consumption has to be done by 2:15.
Correct.
Okay, just clarifying that.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1 with Councilman McLeod being the one nay. As long as we're here, item 15, ratify the accounts payable for the month of July 2018.
Make a motion to approve or ratify the accounts payable.
I have a motion by Councilman Broad. Have a second?
No, second.
I have a second by Councilman McLeod. Do we have a discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, that's all of our action items. Let's circle back to item 8. These are discussion only. Good discussion, important discussion, but they're discussion only for tonight. Item A is discussion regarding the 2018-2019 fiscal year operating budget.
Mayor and council, I do want to note that there is a formula error. So it's in the CVB, it's consultant professional services. The STAR report didn't get included in the total. Councilmember brought it to my attention. So that number increased to 46,720. And then your new surplus is 243,132. So that will be fixed for the final one.
Does anybody have any questions, comments?
I did have one reviewing the budget again, and Byron and Joseph, you guys, anybody, the water conservation rebate, it's my understanding we want to do this as an ongoing thing. Is that really something that, should we be thinking about that in terms of a capital project? Or is that something that we need to start thinking about rolling into the regular budget? It's just, it's a thought for how we think about this. Is this kind of a one-time flash in the pan? Is this an ongoing, or is this something we want to make ongoing?
Well, my understanding from council is that it's going to be an ongoing. It was initially introduced as a capital improvement project to get it started. It was also put in as another project just to keep the funding in place. But staff will happily do what council feels is best in that situation. We just want to make sure that there are funds there for rebates.
Sure,
for those
sure.
Residents and businesses that took advantage of it.
I'm good either way. Definitely next year, I think it should be part
Okay.
of the operating budget. And we've only had, it's only been available for a couple months, backdated to January, so we would know more information next budget, but we could put it in there now, and then adjust the value annually.
Yeah, I think we should assess how well it does.
Yeah,
and
I'm fine
decide
with
at
that. I'm
point.
just.
Yeah, I'm okay with
if-
keeping
if
it
we're-
going for another year or two.
Yeah, we can handle this. I kind of like things that we think are going to be ongoing annual to be in the operating budget, and capital should be reserved for.
I agree with that.
I just don't want anything going in and saying like it's perpetuity now. So.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm cool with capital. We can, next year as we look at that, roll it into operating. Just so that we don't have to have any more work from Lisa, just for that reason.
Excel's so much fun to reformat every time.
Sounds good.
The other question was, this is again a Joseph question, for the park study, the original $57,000 and now $10,000. I had a resident specifically come up and ask me about that, and so I didn't have a great answer for them, so I'm asking you. What does that include? What are we paying for when we pay someone $10,000 or whatever it ends up being? What are we paying for whenever we pay for that for a park study?
So,
Or I guess Byron.
Yeah,
Councilman
I think
Beavers.
I proposed the number, so
What's that involve?
honestly, it's a bucket of money that the staff and council can use to ask consultants on a one-off basis to create, maps or to create various exhibits that we would need to go to a town hall meeting or to, solicit other information from the public. And there's not a specific scope of work.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
I got a sense from the budget meeting that we had this idea and then it
Yeah, so-
shrunk down.
So, I would like to see our Parks and Pathway Plan updated. I do not
What would
think-
that involve, if to update our parks and
Okay,
pathways?
so step one is look at the old plan that's, a decade or more old.
Okay,
See what we've accomplished, see what's left to be done. And then, so take the recommendations from the old plan that haven't been done yet, analyze those. Do we want to continue, having those as recommendations, and where should we supplement? The city has changed dramatically.
in 10 years, yeah.
In 10 years. We know we're gonna have significant residential development on the east side of I-45. We know, there's just, the whole city's different. I don't think that we need a full-scale $57,000 revamp of the plan. I think
Yeah.
that staff and council can work together with the community to get our ideas about where we need additional parks.
Okay.
On paper, to have
But we just have some money in the budget in case we need to hire an engineer or
a landscape architect,
okay.
somebody like that, to
Buy maps, all sorts of.
give us a 5 to 10 year plan about where should we be spending money on parks, instead of it just being, every budget year, hey, what do we want to spend money on? Like, let's have a set plan in place.
Okay, cool, thanks. I think that'll satisfy them.
Anybody else? I would like to say, since this is a discussion item, number one, I really appreciate the work that staff did. Lisa, obviously, you bear the brunt of it, but everybody had their fair share of work. And I remember when the very first budget that we looked at, that Kathy came to me with, I think we were, is it $500,000 or $600,000 over budget? Is that what it was? And you know, and that's when everybody hasn't really come together yet. And so it was like, okay, but let's get to work now. You know, now so that's the first rough draft. Now let's start getting to work. And this is, you know, probably something that you guys may not have even seen or known about. Staff dug deep, got to work, and when it was all said and done, came back and we were under budget. And then compliment council, because I think we all kind of came to the table with our quote-unquote wish list, but that wish list would have gotten us pretty far out around. And so we got smart. We just like this, you know, parks project. I think everybody worked together to come up with some really good solutions. And at the end of the day, when it was all said and done, I think we came up with a really solid budget for our residents that, number one, spends their money wisely, but number two, doesn't spend too much money. You know, we were very responsible. We didn't just you know, crack the piggy bank open and try to see how much money we could spend. And so I just want to compliment both staff and council for doing a great job at budget this year. So thank you.
I want to applaud Lisa for the process. Based on the last budgets that I've ever been through, this one was the smoothest and the most organized that we've ever done.
I know it was the easiest to read and the easiest for...
Yeah, I like the layout.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But it was the easiest for residents to ask questions about. I mean, and actually otherwise made sense. So it was
Agreed.
pretty clear what was going on.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, nobody's got anything else?
I got one more
Go ahead.
question, sorry, Mayor. Do we know when we'll get a full report on the salary surveys?
Oh, yeah.
Funny you should
I
ask.
expect that next week. Gail and I have gone back and forth working through this. We have a preliminary version right now, but we do have some things that that I have some questions on that we need to kind of look at. So we have a rough cost to implement, but in terms of the fine tuning, we're still going through that. So she did say she was traveling this week, but we have been emailing back and forth. So
Would you say it's within the budgeted amount?
at this time, it's below the budget amount.
Thanks.
So I would like to, hopefully we can get that report before we finalize the budget.
That's the plan. Yes, sir.
And you said it was below the budgeted amount?
Yes, sir, it is. We have, like I said, we have a few adjustments, but we still expect it to come in below.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move to item 9 then, which is discussion regarding the 2018 tax rate.
I know we've discussed dropping it 2 cents because we want to save the residents, you know, tax money. I think 2 cents amounts to about $12,000. And looking at the city and the overall expansion, I looked at, you look at building permits, you look at all the activity, and it's sort of trailing off and leveling off. And I think it would be a bad move to lower the tax rate lower than the effective tax rate. And that's just my opinion. I think the city itself would be better served. And I'm not saying we get to take anything from the residents because it's still going down 2 cents. I just think that it'd be in the city's best interest to keep the effective tax rate. And that's all I've got to say.
But to be a tax cut, we would have to use 1808.
Yeah, we can go down to 1808. That would be a tax cut. So I do have a concern, and I don't know, I will admit I did not look at the MDD agenda tonight. At the MDD's budget, one of the things we've done is we've asked a lot of MDD, and how that affects our budget or our spending is a question. So I'll put that for the people on MDD, what your thoughts are.
We haven't met since
Yeah,
the
we
budget
haven't met.
workshop.
It was-
This is my sort of my point because of tonight. I was kind of rolling in here ready to lower it, and I'm like, well, I don't know that
Well, let's
I mean,
be
if
honest.
MDD says-
If
yeah.
MDD comes back and denies council's request for participation in some of the budgeted items, there's no amount of money that we can make up. We could drop,
Right.
I haven't gone all the way down to the bottom of the page, but we could probably go down to zero.
Zero.
And I don't know that.
Still not make
yeah,
up their
I don't-
contribution.
I don't know that it'd make up their contribution, so I appreciate the fact that you're considering MDD in that equation, but I don't know that it's gonna be the deciding factor.
When will we know, when will MDD be making their decision now?
I would imagine probably the fourth Wednesday in September, unless we call a special meeting between now and then.
When do we have to vote on the budget?
That was my next question, yeah.
Tax rolls are due by the 15th. You have to approve the budget before you approve the tax rate.
First
So the
meeting.
next meeting will be the.
September 15th?
Yes.
I think we need to look at calling a special
Special
meeting.
meeting, yeah, you did.
Special
Talked-
meeting.
Kathy and I already talked about that.
I would ask that y'all do that.
Yeah, well, candidly, we haven't had a chance to reach out to the other members yet, so.
Sure.
So regardless of MDD, I mean, we have a lot of things rolling in our favor in Shenandoah. Two in particular we've got about $250,000 worth of debt payments that roll off.
That's true. That's true.
For
The
next
08
year,
the 08
and we
bonds
have-
are done.
In my mind, we have no need to, take out additional debt. And we have significant development coming online, including the AMC Theater, for certainly.
19, yeah.
Certainly, we believe it's going to come online in this next budget year, but after that, for sure. So, I feel like we can very conservatively go below the effective rate.
Can we put the scale back up on the screen again? You don't mind? Thank you.
The budget workshop, I suggested $17.99. I think that level or lower.
1799 is a $12,000 difference.
That's the figure I was.
Oh, yeah, that's what you said.
I believe we should have a commitment to continuing to lower the tax rate below the effective rate. It's mine.
Well, I agree, maybe not to quite that extent.
But I'm in favor for that too. I've been hesitant because we don't have all the information back yet, so once we get all the information back. But at the same time, if everything is what it is, I mean, let's be real, $12,000 isn't going to kill the budget one way or the other. So I think it's, fair to show the residents that we're committed to continually lower the tax rate below the effective tax rate, and not by 0.001 like it's been done in the past, but something that's at least significant that is non-political.
I certainly would support going lower than $17.99, but
I can support that as well, as long as we can, again, show the numbers are.
Well, I like 1799. It goes, it keeps that downward trend going.
Okay, any more discussion?
I guess the 12th will be a busy meeting.
12th will be a busy meeting.
So just to clarify, there hasn't been any decisions, like,
Right.
for when I bring back the
Can we make a
agenda.
decision?
When I bring
No,
I
back,
believe
That's not an
it's
action.
discussion only.
Yeah,
but when I bring back the agenda report, I have to break out the interest and saving and maintenance operations. So
Oh,
Do we
I
have
will
a
do it on the
consensus?
proposed, the proposed was the effective tax rate, but we can amend that, correct, Bill? When they approve it? Okay, just wanted to make sure.
I think I would run the numbers on 1799 and 1809.
Okay.
Does that seem to be our two choices? I would think that would be.
I'm
I don't
not-
think you need to
not
run the whole
holding
chart. I
anything,
think
just-
I think 1799 is.
I was about to say, I'm hearing a majority say 1799, so it looks like a pretty good number to hone in on.
To also, okay.
Not that that's been
It's not
voted on
defined
yet,
now.
but heard it a couple times now. Okay, well, if nobody's got anything else, we'll move to item 10, which is discussion regarding a code of ethics.
All right, council, this has come up before in preliminary discussion, and we put together a very rough draft. And what we tried to do is incorporate comments from Councilman Fletcher in the past, recommendations from Gail. And so what you see in your agenda pack is includes those items. So again, it's very rough. So we're ready to discuss any input you may have.
Bill, do you have any input?
Well, you're going to see 2 or 3 areas where there's questions or blanks to be filled in. I think the most significant thing that is not in this draft that Kathy and I talked about at some length, and frankly, we're going to leave it for tonight for you to talk about, is if you're going to have a code of ethics and you're going to have some enforcement, who's going to be the enforcement, I'll call it agency, board, whatever. Because the way this is written right now, there's not, if you'll notice, there's an absence of where do you go if there's a code of ethics violation. And if you look at organizations, cities, boards, they're all over the board in terms of what they do. Some cities, the city council also handles the code of ethics. There are others where there's a citizens board. There are others where there's a mixture of elected officials and citizens. I've seen some where there's a member of city council, there's a member of P&Z, there's a member of MDD. Just
Any other committee?
any other committee. So it's kind of wide open.
Yeah, I have trouble with a lot of the definitions, and I highlighted every instance going through this whole thing, so.
Where does state law supersede any of this then? I mean, we are governed by state law and state sanctions.
State law, to the extent that state law is stricter than something you pass, state law will supersede. To the extent that the city elects to make something stricter than state law, then the city's stricter interpretation would govern. And I'm not saying this is the law, but let's just say the state of Texas said no government official could accept a gift of $100. If the city said 125, no, you can't accept more than 100. If we said 75, then you cannot accept a gift of more than 75.
So that brings the question again of enforcement. My understanding is the Class A city defines how and when council members can be removed. Can we pass our own ordinances to make that, to change that?
No.
Or is state law supersede?
Well, state law is going to supersede
That's my understanding.
removing a council member from office, but you can have a separate board that says you had an ethical violation, and then it's up to the public if they believe in the next election that
right.
that's significant enough, then they vote.
But that's the only way that a council member can be removed is by election, or unless violation of certain real laws. Yeah.
Right. And I will tell you, I talked to only 1 or 2 people, but some people have found that boards that handle ethics violations can be very political, very
Just look at an HOA, exactly.
right. It's yeah.
Well, and to your point, my initial thought is if you were to have some sort of enforcement board like that, it needs to be somebody completely third party, some sort of unrelated entity, not staff, not an elected official, not even a resident. You know, I mean, I think it has to be, that's something you outsource. It would be my opinion, to keep there from being any conflict of interest.
Right.
As an example, this type of investigation is something that someone like Gail would,
Exactly.
is able to conduct.
But yes, it's third party, but I've heard stories of
Well, who writes the
people
check
who-
to the third party? I
well,
mean,
people who have an agenda file ethics complaints once a week against whoever they
and that's a
are
concern
against.
that I would have. I love the concept of it, but people who are ethical, who are good and ethical, don't need this. And
Right.
people who are bad and unethical will figure out ways around it or just not worry about it. I like the idea. I like this concept of thinking about this. And then, of course, we hit enforceability. I mean, yeah, we can remove people from boards, but, we can do that now. We could remove somebody today from MDD, P&Z, it's my understanding, right, at any time. If we felt like there was an issue, or just because, we could bring that up and take care of that. So, and of course, Kathy, as city administrator, could deal with employees who are having an issue. And if we were having an issue with Kathy, we could deal with that. So,
Well, I think it goes back to oversight and accountability.
Okay.
So if we're going to make that choice, then it could be seen as political. Whereas if it's a third-party entity that's saying, look, you did have an ethics violation, this is who did it, then no longer is it political. It's not us saying that, hey, mayor, give us somebody else to choose for the MDD board. It's a third-party entity saying that. You're right, people can, there's game players all the time, and so they know how to manipulate the rules, and they're gonna do that. But that doesn't negate having something in play that pretty much sets forth the rules that everybody plays with, especially when it comes to ethics, across the board. And I think, in looking at the draft here, I think Charlie's right, there's a lot of definitions that really need to be redefined. When I went through and read it, it appears that it only applies to council and staff, and I don't think that was the intent behind this. It was to apply to anybody that's on a board. It defines board members, but then if you read the applicability, it applies, the applicability is only to council and staff members.
And I went back to your initial proposal and what you said, and I agree with what you said, I'm saying that this is just a little over the top to me, so I agree with you.
And this is intended to have an ongoing discussion and more work. And it's also very concise so that council doesn't have to try and digest 100 pages to pare down. So it's easier to add and fill the holes. And that was kind of the approach we were taking. We can certainly add some definitions, refer to the other boards and so forth that are involved in the city. That's no problem.
But the way I wrote it, it should apply to every elected official. It should apply to P&Z members, MDD. If you're appointed to a board, in fact, the way it's written, I believe it applies currently to the civic club member,
It does.
officers. And that's the way I wrote it and intended it to
Then you
be
say a
written.
municipal officer or an employee means a paid, unpaid officer or employee of the city of Shenandoah, including but not limited to members of any municipal board. So then, I understand what you.
Yeah, I wrote it to be very broad.
You did.
Bill, something that I think would be helpful is if we could cross-reference our existing policy manual and state law, so we could see the sections that are
Sure.
applicable. I think our policy manual addresses nepotism in much greater detail.
Our policy manual addresses nepotism. Our policy manual does not address many things that are in this.
Right.
And neither does state law on some. There are some that do.
That's our employee policy manual you're referring to?
Yes.
So that doesn't affect an appointed board member.
And we certainly could, as part of this, apply the
Right.
policy manual to board members.
So what would be the way to reach out to, look at Section 10, future employment? I mean, ultimately, the penalty for violating an ethics violation is either removal from the board if you're a board member, or termination of employment, I mean, as a final cause. If somebody leaves and immediately takes a job, what kind of action can we have? We can say it's unethical, but if there's nothing, don't pass a law that we can't enforce.
Well,
I'm not passing laws here, to
Yeah.
be clear.
As an example, yes.
It is an ordinance.
It would be.
I mean, what would happen in the case, and I think you're talking about 10B probably, is the city would not do business with that organization. So if, pick somebody, Chase Bank or something, if we were banking with Chase Bank, the city could say, well, so-and-so went to work for Chase Bank at a high enough level. We're not, because of this, we're not going to do anything, do any business. But your point is well taken. I mean, there's some of these, the remedy is in effect, there's no good remedy. It's my understanding that some organizations have an ethics policy and do not have any board or any remedy. It simply is a policy.